Joining me now, Kentucky Senator-elect Rand Paul and Utah Senator-elect Mike Lee. Gentlemen, since each of you will be a United States Senator in less than 24 hours, I'm going to drop the word elect when I address you. So, Senator Paul, to you first. If you had to vote tomorrow on a proposal to raise the debt ceiling, how would you vote and why would you vote that way?
I can't imagine voting to raise the debt ceiling. I would only consider it if we attached a balanced budget rule to it or if we attached significant spending cuts. So I can't imagine voting for it because year after year we vote to raise a debt ceiling, but no one ever restrains spending. So the people have sent a message. The people want to cut spending. They don't want to keep raising the debt.
Now, Senator Lee, Austin Goolsbee, who's the president's chief economic advisor, told one of the national talk shows yesterday that there would be absolute catastrophe, that Social Security checks would stop, that military pay would stop, that soldiers would have to leave the battlefield, that buildings would have to be closed, that the government might have to actually shut down if we didn't raise the debt ceiling. Does this tell you that the government planned to spend all of its money anticipating all of this borrowing and maybe even some printing by the Federal Reserve? It never even intended to spend only what it takes in tax dollars?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it tells us. This is a preconceived idea that they have. This is a strategy that they use. It's the same kind of strategy they used when they pushed TARP down our throats a few years ago. Economic catastrophe will await us. It's certain. There's nothing we can do about it unless we do this. And it's how we've gotten ourselves to the point where within a year's time we'll reach a debt threshold of $15 trillion.
Right.
And that's unsustainable. We've got to stop this.
What will you say, Senator Lee, to the people on the other side of the aisle, maybe even some of your soon-to-be colleagues on the Republican side, who will be the predictors of doom and gloom and say, well, we can't take money from grandma and grandpa. We have to give the troops their pay. We have to keep this, that, and the other part of the government open. I mean, are you willing to draw a line saying, I will not cross this line, come what may?
Well, yes, because what we have to remember is it's not a question of whether there are going to have to be painful cuts. It's a question of who and when and how bad the cuts are going to have to be. It's a question of how bad our economy has to get in order to come to grips with the reality that we now face. So we have to have a balanced budget amendment. We need to put it in place right now. There are going to have to be some difficult decisions made, but to just continue to kick this ball down the road and to pretend the problem doesn't exist only makes matters worse.
Senator Paul, is it realistic to expect that the debt ceiling would not be raised, given the culture of government? You and your colleague on the screen now are exceptions to the rule. You are dyed-in-the-wool, true blue believers in the Constitution, that the government can only do what the Constitution authorizes it to do. I cannot say the same about virtually all the Democrats and many of the Republicans that you will be joining. So where will we go on we can't raise the debt ceiling? Isn't it going to go up whether the two of you want it to go up or not?
Well, I don't know. We're too new to be beaten down. We think we can do anything to change Washington, and we also think that we must do it. But here's my point. They make it out to be a Hobson's choice. You either do it or government shuts down.
Right.
What about we don't raise the debt ceiling and we just spend what comes in? I call it the spend what you have plan. We bring in $200 billion every month up here. Over $2 trillion a year comes in. Why can't we just spend $2 trillion instead of spending $4 trillion? Just spend what comes in.
Do you, Senator Paul, expect them to try and co-opt you, as either former Senator Frist or former Senator Trent Lott said? Are they going to dangle these Christmas tree ornaments, even though Christmas is over, in front of you, saying, we'll build this in Kentucky and you can have your name on that if we can just have your vote on this?
So far, it looks like we may be co-opting them. I think we've already had an influence, and we haven't even been sworn in yet. So I think you're going to see a lot of new things, and I think a lot of people up here want to be more conservative. They've been afraid to talk about entitlements because they think they can't get elected. But I just got elected saying that, you know what, as much as I don't want to change things, we are being forced to change things, and that the age for entitlements will probably gradually have to rise, and I was still able to get elected. So I think people need to be emboldened and say the people want solutions. They don't want to pass this debt on to our kids and our grandkids.
I am talking to two of the boldest new members of the Senate because, as you know, your colleague from Utah campaigned on, among other things, the idea that the public shouldn't get to vote for U.S. senators, that we should return the decision-making to who becomes a U.S. senator to state legislatures. And, of course, if that were the case, Senator Lee, we wouldn't have to worry about repealing Obamacare because nobody sent to Washington by a state legislature would dare have voted in favor of it, given the incredible impositions it puts on the states.
I think that's right. And, of course, the 17th Amendment's not going anywhere. That ship has sailed, and it sailed almost 100 years ago. But what we can restore is the notion that we had in prior eras in this country in which we recognize that there is a fundamental distinction between state power and federal power. The federal government needs to stick to those things for which it was created.
Right.
National defense, immigration, regulating interstate and foreign trade, and things like that. It's not supposed to be all things to all people. It's not supposed to tell us where to go to the doctor and how to pay for it.
Oh, they love to tell us where to go to the doctor and how to pay for it. Senator Paul, do you see much hope in repealing Obamacare, or do you think that that the different attitude in the Congress will have to gradually wear away at it, defund this, defund that, add this to something that the president has to have, even though independently he wouldn't go for it?
Well, you know, as a layman and a physician, but an avid reader, I love to read great constitutional decisions. And I was just blown away by Henry Hudson's decision where he says, you know what? Inactivity is not commerce.
Right.
If inactivity is commerce, they can regulate anything I do. So it pretty much is amazing. And I think our best chance is through the court system of striking it down.
Wow. Who would have thought that my former colleagues in black robes, who for years were derided as being activists, would be the ones that may actually save the Constitution? Prediction, Senator Lee, will the court save the Constitution by throwing out Obamacare, maybe even keeping the ceiling on the debt?
I think so. I think it will be found unconstitutional at the end of the day. You knock out the individual mandate, the rest of it crumbles. But let me say this, Judge. It's important to remember that we, as part of the political process, also have a role in the Constitution.
Yes.
Rand Paul and I will take an oath to uphold the Constitution when we're sworn in day after tomorrow. That means that we need to read it. We need to decide ourselves whether or not we have it, and not rely solely on the courts to decide whether or not it's unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
I believe it is unconstitutional, and I'll fight to bury this thing, and I'll dance on its grave.
Absolutely. It is the duty of all three branches to uphold the Constitution, because you will all take the same oath. Gentlemen, congratulations to you tomorrow. Senator Paul, Senator Lee, thanks for joining us.